What is up? This is your LA in a minute, and today is October 24th, which marks more than 150 years since one of the worst atrocities in Los Angeles and American history. I'm talking about the Chinese Massacre, which took place in what is now the heart of downtown LA and was a despicable act of violence and an inescapable stain on the legacy of Los Angeles. Let's get into it. In 1871, Los Angeles was a Wild West outpost, a dusty pueblo of barely more than 6,000 people. Amongst the residents in the dusty pueblo were 172 Chinese immigrants, many of whom had come to California during the gold rush and later to work on the Transcontinental Railroad. The Chinese community of Los Angeles was concentrated in an area known as Calle de los Negros, which was the city's notorious vice district. This street, which is now known as Los Angeles Street, was lined with saloons, gambling parlors, and brothels, and was known for more than a decade as the most evil place on earth. For a while, relations between Chinese immigrants and other Angelenos were relatively peaceful. However, tensions began to rise in the late 1860s when local newspapers like the Los Angeles News and the Los Angeles Star started publishing editorials condemning Chinese immigration and portraying the Chinese as inferior and immoral. Local businesses soon joined the fray, advertising no Chinese employed or simply no Chinese, further fueling the flames of xenophobia. On October 24th, 1871, these simmering tensions exploded into violence. The spark was a shootout between rival Chinese tongs or mutual benefit associations over the kidnapping of a Chinese woman. During the conflict, a police officer was wounded and Robert Thompson, a former saloon owner who came to the officer's aid, was killed. Word of Thompson's death spread rapidly, fueling false rumors that Chinese residents were, quote, killing whites wholesale. This ignited a mob of about 500 men, nearly 10% of the city's population, who descended upon the area in a frenzy of violence. The mob's actions were brutal and swift. Rioters climbed onto rooftops using pickaxes to break through and shoot Chinese residents inside, and those who fled were gunned down in the streets. The rioters dragged Chinese residents from their homes, looting and lynching. By the end of the 3-hour rampage, 18 Chinese men and boys lay dead, 15 by hanging. The victims included the respected Chinese doctor Jean Tong, and tragically and somewhat ironically, only one of those killed was actually involved in the initial shootout. The aftermath was equally disturbing. While a grand jury indicted 25 men for murder, only 10 stood trial. 8 were convicted of manslaughter, but those convictions were overturned on a legal technicality, and the defendants were never retried. The massacre, which is still the largest mass lynching in American history, represented a dark turning point. Instead of prompting reflection and change, it seemed to embolden anti-Chinese sentiment, and it led to the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. Despite this tragedy, the Chinese community of Los Angeles showed remarkable resilience. Within a year, they began rebuilding, and by 1880, the numbers had grown fivefold. Old Chinatown began to develop only a few blocks away from this harrowing incident, and the Chinese American community in Los Angeles started to grow and thrive in Los Angeles in spite of this unspeakable tragedy. Today, this often overlooked event serves as a grim reminder of LA's history of racial violence and the ongoing struggle for justice and equality. That's the Chinese Massacre of 1871. All right, LA, it's been a minute.